Welcome, everybody. This is two-way. Some of you are new here, so I'm going to talk briefly about what we do here, whether you're watching on YouTube or on the two-way platform. Welcome. This is a place for sophisticated, lengthy conversations about lots of stuff. Today, we're going to talk about Kamala Harris, Donald Trump. We're proud of the fact that we attract Republicans and Democrats here, independents, people of all sorts. We have civil conversations. We don't yell at each other. We're here to learn and educate and understand. And we're going to go for about an hour today. I'm going to talk first about how I see things in what's happened, what's going forward, and then lots of great people to hear from. And as always, a big part of this platform is to let folks communicate, ask questions, make comments. So if you want question or comment, again, this is a place for civility and understanding. As Elvis Costello would say, peace, love, and understanding. So if you're new here and you do get called on, please keep that in mind. I see this story in three parts right now. There's the backward-looking story of what caused President Biden to go through with something that was on his mind at the end of last week, which is to try to hold on to the presidency but relinquish the nomination. There's the second short-term question of how the Democratic Party is going to find a new nominee, and what are the sort of dimensions of Vice President Harris, her search for a running mate, whether she'll name a running mate now or after she's heads towards the nomination, whether they'll still do the virtual roll call, what the convention will look like, and then the question of the general election. So I'm going to talk briefly about those. In terms of what happened with President Biden, it's a little bit opaque because the human element entered into it. I reported on Thursday. Some of you might know that President Biden was not planning to endorse Vice President Harris. I believe that was his intention at the time, according to my sources. I believe it changed in the interim because there's two sides to that. There's two equities involved. One is endorsing her makes her the machine candidate, the establishment candidate, links her closer to Joe Biden. And to some extent, her mission now is to separate herself from her own administration to increase her chances of winning. But at the same time, Joe Biden's proud of his record, and many people reached out after my reporting to say, how could you not endorse your vice president, leaving aside the historic significance of her vice presidency, leaving aside what would be the historic significance of her presidency, leaving aside loyalty? How could you not be proud of her and being part of the administration? So I think that changed. We'll see. I also think that the pressure on him primarily came from the fact that the campaign's polling was significantly worse than they were willing to acknowledge, and in many cases worse than the public polling in the battleground states. He had one electoral college path before the debate, the three Great Lakes states and Nebraska's Omaha district, and the paths were not increasing. I believe the political support was about to crater. Many more elected Democrats than said publicly did not want him to be the nominee. And then finally, maybe the dispositive thing was the fundraising. You can run for president with less money than the other side, but not with no money. And the small dollar donations and the bundlers were whittling down to next to nothing. They were trying different ways to goose that, both the fat cats and the small cats, and it wasn't working. And again, they were headed into a convention that was going to be a disaster. And the general election would have been just ridiculous because no one would have wanted to campaign with him. Democrats were worried about answering questions about his acuity. And that was all before he had another incident, which obviously he might have had. Second question of what happens now, lots of questions that I've been trying to get answers to since Thursday, but people reluctant to talk about it because their expectation, or at least their professed expectation, was that the president would stay on. I don't see anyone who's going to run against Kamala Harris. I don't think the governor of Pennsylvania will, Illinois, Michigan, California, New Jersey. I don't think any of them will. And I think she faces a lot of choices. What kind of staff does she hire? What kind of fundraising does she do? Who she picks as her running mate? Does she take over the convention? How much of the convention should be about President Biden? What role does Barack Obama play now? You're going to see a lot of energy and excitement. And I think you could see some rich person trying to figure out if they can slip David Plouffe $10 million to run her campaign, to figure out a way to quickly staff up here. And then the third question, the general election. I've said for many days, there are weaknesses of President Biden that she doesn't have. Most pronouncedly, She's not someone who people don't perceive as having the mental acuity to be president. There's weaknesses that they share, some aspects of the Biden-Harris record on inflation, on immigration, et cetera. And then there are weaknesses that she has that he doesn't. Okay. I think that no one can tell you what kind of general election candidate she can be. There's all sorts of Republican points of view that she can't win. There's all sorts of Democrats who wish the nominee were someone else. President Biden, I know, has grave doubts about it and has had grave doubts about both what kind of candidate she'd be and what kind of president she'd be if she won. I think normally vice presidential selection matters very little except picking someone who's qualified to be president and perceived that way. I think this pick matters a lot. I think chances are, if they ask me who I think she'll pick Mark Kelly. We can talk about that. Alex Castellanos, who's here, and hopefully we'll hear from soon. Alex Castellanos, who's a Republican consultant, said the other day that he thought the ticket would go ahead of Donald Trump. He thinks they'll eventually lose. But I think we all know what kind of shot in the arm that would be for the Democratic Party up and down the ballot if they can take the lead, even briefly, if they can pull off a great convention. I think the range of options when it was Biden, Trump was most likely Trump, very big win. Second most likely, Trump, even bigger win. Third most likely, Trump, narrow win. Fourth most likely, Biden, narrow win. I think Kamala Harris could also lose in a landslide, but I also think she can win. And I think the people are going to talk about word salad. They're going to talk about inexperience. They're going to talk about her approval rating. I think the two most important things, truly, or I'd say three most important things. One is, can she manage this? She has not been a good manager of political teams. And let's see if whether she takes the existing team and works with them, whether she brings in a lot of new people. Just to her history as someone leading operations, whether it's Attorney General's office, Senate office, vice president, or her presidential campaign, she's just not been a good manager of people, and we'll see. Second, she's not been good under pressure. I urge any of you who want to see a case study of the negative side of Kamala Harris, go watch how she handled Medicare for all in her presidential campaign and the flip-flop she did. To me, that was extremely cautionary. She just is not, she's the opposite of a red light performer. And I think that's very cautionary. And then the third thing is, how does she define her vision of the future that's separate from Joe Biden? Does she come up with 2 or 3 policy ideas that are new and separate that help define something that the people who are thinking about the real lives of real people would care about? Can she do that in a way that's effective? I will tell you, I said all the time about Joe Biden and his acuity. It wasn't as bad as the Republicans said, but it wasn't nearly as fine as the Democrats said. I'd say the same thing about the vice president's prospects of winning this race and her general political skills and intelligence. She's not as bad, nearly as bad as Republicans say, but she's not as good as her defenders say. And she's going to have to now rise to the occasion. I think if she rises to the occasion, she could win. I don't have any doubt about that, but I do have doubts about whether she'll be able to rise to the occasion. I knew her before she was Attorney General, or before she was Senator, rather. I have incredible respect for her. And like Mitt Romney, like Hillary Clinton, like several other people who've run for president, the private version is significantly better than the public version. She just is having trouble presentation. And she's now been in a little bit of a psyched out mode. She'll be able to galvanize on abortion rights better than Joe Biden would, no question. She'll be able to potentially energize constituencies that he couldn't. And there's going to be extreme excitement about this. Her against Donald Trump is an extraordinary story. There was a boring story about Trump versus Biden that the press wasn't interested, a lot of the public was turned off by. This is an incredible story. And if she plays her cards right, and her team does, she can win back the traditional Democratic advantage with the media in a presidential campaign. Joe Biden was never going to do that, even before the debate. And after the debate, he had zero chance of doing that. And in general, whichever side has the press's favor has won every presidential election I've ever covered. So very grateful to you all for joining. We're going to have a two-way conversation now. I'm going to call on a few folks that I want to hear from, and then would love to start calling on folks. If you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. Let me start with Senator Sununu, who has been deeply opinionated about what was going to happen Senator, I'd love to just have you be forward-looking here now. How do you see, if you were Kamala Harris and her team, how do you see their short-term challenges?
Well, let me be clear. Deeply opinionated, not in a bad way. I just had a pretty strong conviction after the debate where this would go.
Not in a bad way. Not in a bad
Okay,
way.
well, thank you. I think the first challenge, it's not only on her, though she'll have a lot of input, is how do they shape this selection process so that it looks positive, open, transparent, so that it doesn't look like there were just a few leadership people in a room. I mean, I think
let me stop you. Let me stop you on that. Yep. If no one runs against her, how would they stage manage that?
By setting up a process where it's clear that if someone did want to run, they could. Most obviously, by doing it in public, right? They were going to do this virtual roll call, which, even though there might be a live stream, it wasn't really a public event. I don't know all of the rules regarding the delegations, but maybe a way that you can do the convention in Chicago live, make the selection through that process, and not do the virtual roll call, and still ensure ballot eligibility in Ohio and Wisconsin. So you just want a process that looks again open and transparent. Where people can make speeches, where people are clearly given the opportunity to put other names in, where, I mean, and look, there's stagecraft to this, where you encourage delegates to have open and delegations, the delegation from Washington State, the delegation from Georgia, the delegation from Wisconsin, to have maybe open meetings where different possibilities of candidates are discussed, or you give candidates or even delegates the chance to stand up and advocate for a particular candidate, even if they haven't said they want to be a candidate for president. So there is some stagecraft here. There's some planning and some organization, I think, that they can do that would be helpful. I think if she knows who her vice presidential choice is, I think earlier is better to announce it. I think that creates some storylines, early storylines, makes it look normal, like it's Harris and Kelly versus Trump and Vance from the get-go. It takes you away from the story about the president stepping down a little bit faster. And, in terms of what's going to happen, Alex, I happen to be on when Alex talked about momentum in these things, and they could easily swing back, at least temporarily, to the Democrats. The one thing I would caution in looking at momentum is, it's first the adage of national polls are absolutely or almost absolutely meaningless. Made this many times. It can give you a sense of where momentum is. Yeah, you asked 4 years ago national polls to this year and see obviously that Biden was suffering. But what's really going to matter here are the state polls in the battleground states. And if Harris is doing 2 points better than Biden or 3 points better than Biden, that doesn't mean she'll be doing 2 or 3 points better everywhere. I think the way voters in Georgia will react to her candidacy and the voters she picks up and maybe some voters that she loses are going to be different than the voters she gains or loses in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. So it's really going to take probably a solid 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the selection process to really have a sense of where we are in terms of the battleground states.
Senator, lastly, how would you handicap Harris versus Trump?
I would handicap it exactly where it was. Until I see that Kelly really makes a difference in Arizona, the path for her is exactly the same as the path for President Biden, which was through Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and the district in Nebraska. It'd be foolish to suddenly think that there's another path until you see a big shift in in statewide battleground state balloting. So, I think Trump's odds are probably 70. It's probably a 70-30 right now.
Okay, Senator, thank you. Stay with us. I want to bring in a bunch of Democrats here to try to create an instant panel, and not all of you have your hands up. So if you will unmute when I ask you to. Dan Turntine, who's worked for Hillary Clinton and Speaker Pelosi, Tom Rogers, Lauren Leader. If all of you could unmute, I'd love to bring you in and just create here an instant panel to discuss what you guys think.
And Mark, you're always so amazing about summarizing the events, but the excitement around the country is extraordinary. And I think it's one of those moments in politics where we kind of thought it might come. We've obviously been talking about this for weeks, but the reality of this is riveting. And I have been on just a barrage of texts and I just the answer from everyone. And by the way, I'm a Biden delegate, so I've also been getting this from all the other delegates. People are all in, and I think the context of what has gone down in the Democratic Party, the sort of public airing of dirty laundry, has been so painful. There will not be an open process. Like, Harris is the nominee. We're going to move on from this very quickly.
By the way, I'm told she's announced that she's running.
Yes, that just happened while you were talking. She just made her statement. Like, there will be an instant coalescence around this, and it is not complicated. She was on the ticket. Millions of people voted for her and Biden. This is not a hard narrative. I think all the stuff that we talked about over the last few weeks on this platform about, not wanting it to feel like somehow she was anointed, that she didn't earn it. All of that, I think, changes today because she did. She was on the ticket and she's been campaigning with the president, and people voted for both of them. It is the Biden-Harris ticket, and she has been duly selected by the delegates to be not to be the nominee, but to be on the ticket. I think this is going to be about 5 minutes worth of national conversation, and the entire party is going to very quickly coalesce around her. What I think there are two big issues, I think, at hand, to your point about her biggest liability, in my view, is not any of the sort of past foibles around word salads and some of the communications issues that she has had. She has massively upped her public speaking game in the last few months. A lot of her comments have gone viral in Democratic circles. People have been very excited. She's been talking about the campaign, the way that she's been talking about Trump, et cetera. Her biggest issue has always been, and I think will be, her management. I got a lot of calls from former senior people in the Biden administration this morning, in the last few hours. I think we're going to, for sure, the smart money is on her bringing back someone from Obama world, maybe a Jim Messina. Obviously, you made the point about, $1 million for David Plouffe. I don't think he's coming, but nor is David Axelrod. But I certainly think there's a lot of sense that, like, bring in a winning team that has, run winning campaigns. I don't believe that's going to be, I think that's going to be an Obama person. Let's see where that shakes out. Obviously, a complicated time for the Biden campaign, for Jen O'Malley, and for the others who've been working very hard. But I think there's going to be a big shakeup there. It's going to happen fast. And the other thing I just want to say is that what I've been saying on this program with you, Mark, and with the listeners for weeks, I really stand by. And that is that the path to the nomination, to the win in November, is different for Kamala than it was for Joe. I disagree with Senator Sununu respectfully, because she is a completely different candidate with a totally different turnout model. What she does in terms of college students who have been sitting on the sidelines because their frustration with Joe Biden is a completely different ballgame, even in places like Michigan. I think especially in places like Arizona, where there is an abortion ballot measure, she will be pushing that relentlessly. I think that changes things. I think that the power and the passion of Black women who, for whatever ambivalence they may have had about her, all of that is gone as of 2 hours ago. And I think the women of America who were deeply pained by Hillary Clinton's loss in 2016 will not allow the same kinds of kneecapping, sexist and racist smears that so disabled Hillary in so many ways, obviously not the racist part, but the sexist part. They will not allow it. The media is different than it was in 2016. Remember when Hillary ran in 2016, Matt Lauer was still at NBC. We still had, there's a completely different media world dominated by a lot of very complicated men who were oozing sexism against her. The media is very different now. We will not allow her to be smeared. We're going to fight for her to be judged on the merits as meritocracy. So, I mean, lots more to come, but I think her path is vastly different from President Biden's. It is a whole new world. It is a whole new ballgame. I'm, for one, pretty excited about this. For political people, this is like, it doesn't get any better than political moments like this. We're not going to be sleeping for a while.
Lauren, thank you. Hank Morris, if the vice president called you and said, Hank, what should the top 3 things on my to-do list be? What would you be on your list? Top 3 things for her to do now?
Well, immediately I put out a statement on a video on air where she looks presidential. And I do what she just did. I'm not sure she did it on camera, where she said she intends to earn the nomination. She doesn't want it handed to her, which it will be handed to her, but let her go through the chance of earning it. That's number 1. Number 2, vice presidential selection process. She needs to look deliberate, thoughtful, presidential, and pick somebody who's really qualified, milk that for a couple of days. Third, I think she needs to, and I think she'll automatically do this, but create a sense of motion, energy, excitement, which probably exists for Lauren already, but it needs to exist in 2 different places. One is in terms of swing voters in the key states, and in terms of base. I don't think her running is going to change anything for the MAGA base, but I think it's a total reframing of the election for the Democratic base, and for potential swing voters, because all of a sudden Donald Trump looks old. He looks overweight. He doesn't look any better compared to her. And she is new and exciting and different. There's some risk with that. Fourth, I think she needs to have a couple of specific policy things that at least an emphasis, if not totally different than Biden. The one difference I have with what Lauren was saying was, I think basically I agree with you, but geographically the path is going to be very similar. It's going to be Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Maybe if we get lucky, add in Arizona and North Carolina. But basically the path geographically is going to be very similar to what it was before. I'll shut up.
All right, Hank, thank you. Tom Rogers, I brought in because Tom has extensive experience in press conference today. His ballot access remains completely up in the air. So, Tom, I'd love your overall reaction to changing Biden for Harris, and then how you see now the third-party threat, which you've written so much about in the new configuration.
Well, I agree that she is going to be the nominee. I think she's the weakest of the possible named Democrats to run. She has the incumbency problem, which we've seen in all the Western democracies, is a very bad tag to have. And she's going to be tagged with the age issue. She's the one nominee that is not going to be able to get away from that. She is going to be viewed as an enabler that was willing to look the other way on Biden's frailties. And J.D. Vance has already put that issue out front and center by calling on Biden to resign immediately. And she's going to have to be there defending that, which I think is the one issue more than any that Democrats needed to move away from. And with her as a candidate, it's still front and center. And while I agree with Lauren that she has improved as a speaker, she is still not as good as a number of the other possible Democrats who are much better on their feet She's fine behind the teleprompter. She is not a politician when it comes to impromptu remarks. And for all those reasons, I think having gone through the pain of this process of getting rid of Biden only to substitute with Harris is not putting the Democrats' best hand forward. I do expect major donors to try over the next 4 or 5 days to draft an alternative to create some competition for this. I think it's an uphill fight and unlikely to succeed, but I would expect that effort over the next week to take place and be quite aggressive.
Okay, Tom, thank you. A little bit of intrigue here. The Clintons have endorsed Vice President Harris. Barack Obama endorsed an open process. So we're going to have to figure out what that's about. Tom, thank you. And I want to bring Dan back if I can.
Yep,
Dan,
I'm here.
You should still be unmuted. Dan, I'd love to just get your overall sense of how you see where we are now. And again, what do you think is should be on the to-do list of the vice president?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I agree with Lauren. I mean, my phone has been pinging nonstop with people who are not Kamala fans who are excited. I mean, Democratic staffers and others who were hoping perhaps it would be somebody else, but they're like, the family drama is over. This was awful. Let's move past it. You know, like it's all about defeating Trump. So I was a little surprised about that. There does seem to be just some energy here a couple hours into this, you know, to kind of move forward. You know, with you, Mark, I've been hearing several people are not going to, you know, challenge Kamala. There's great risk. Obviously, the most reliable Democratic voting group is Black women. So if you're going to step forward, it is a risk today, and it is certainly a risk for you tomorrow. So, you know, to Lauren's point, this will likely be Kamala. You know, I think the map to 270, we keep talking about this in Biden's fractured coalition. You know, I will be curious, African-American, you know, men that Biden seemed to be losing, young African-American men. Can he improve with that? Young voters, I agree with Lauren. It does. I've seen some polls that show she does energize them more. And then what does that make her map look like? I was actually surprised Mark Tammy Baldwin's already come out and endorsed Kamala. I was curious where those Midwestern Senate candidates, Sherrod Brown, you know, Elise Slotkin, others, do they want Kamala? I'll be curious. Historically, the upper Midwest has not been the most hospitable to Hillary Clinton and other people. Will it be for Kamala? You know, can she put a state like North Carolina or Arizona with the abortion ballot initiative in play? You know, things to watch. And then, you know, not to repeat what other people said, I guess one other thing I'm curious about, Trump. You know, you hear she reminds me of Hillary Clinton a lot, but people can't really define what that means. But she has a chance to introduce herself, chance to have a good convention. And at least right now, it seems like the party is getting behind her, whether it's earned or not. That's where the trend lines are going.
Just wait for the avalanche of likable conversations because it's a woman running for president. So, I mean, this is, and it's not a criticism of you. It's that is what happens when women run for president, is that it becomes this likability trap. And we will see how it unfolds. I think it will be different than it was in 2016. I think she is a different person than Hillary. She, in some ways, doesn't have the same history. There are people who think they know her and people who don't. So, but you cannot separate out some of that kind of the gender politics from this. I really recommend to everybody, I said this on Twitter today, if you've never read Ali Vitale's book, Electable, I really recommend that this is a great time to pick up that book because the United States is one of very few nations that has not succeeded in electing a female. And it's going to be, it's a fascinating time. Just quick thing, Mark, because I have some reporting. I've been getting some tallies in my text on the New York delegation of delegates. So far, I've got close to 70 New York delegates that are all endorsing Harris. So, you know, I think there's going to be a very quick coalescing among Democrats state by state.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. So 3 things, and then I want to bring Joe Scarborough in. Number one, how can she raise money? The Biden team was already being outraised before the debate. How does she do with big donors? How much time does she have to spend going to events? You know, George W. Bush proved that if you got the right kind of finance vibe, you don't need to send a candidate wasting his time or her time going to events. So how will she be Fat Cats? How will she be grassroots? Will women of America now, you know, open their electronic wallets? Will she be able to raise hundreds of millions online? Two is, will there be a debate? Will there be a Trump Harris debate? And then lastly is this question of her getting out there, right? Like, what kind of events does she do? Does she do big rallies? What's her schedule look like? All super important. Joe Scarborough, would love to just get your overview sense of what you know and what you think about how this changes the race.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm sure was the back and forth and the battle on whether the president was going to endorse the vice president or not, and what impact that would have, and whether she actually wanted the endorsement or wanted it to seem like she was going to do it on her own. Um,
Thank you for
I
that.
think
Good.
I think my big takeaway right now, with two takeaways. One, how quickly the Democratic Party seems to be coalescing behind a candidate that, as you and I both know, even 3-4 weeks ago, there were a lot of questions about. They suddenly have decided that she is not only their best way forward, but it's actually somebody that they have been privately talking about and sound excited about. I've talked to a good bit of donors over the weekend since your report broke on Friday. They are lined up and ready to start giving Vice President Harris a lot of money, and I suspect that she will do very well. The campaign, I will say, I've talked to a great number of people in the campaign over the past several weeks since the debate. They were very concerned about Joe Biden moving forward. And this was Joe Biden's campaign. And the fundraising arm of it, as well as the communication arm, the grassroots arm, all very concerned about Joe Biden and all very excited about where they are right now, and they believe they can
she's no way the best the Democrats could put forward, but it is what it is.
Okay. Mayhill, one question for you, and then I want to bring Megan McCain in. If you could give her one piece of advice, what would it be? One piece of advice for the vice president.
Don't get caught and be trapped in the abortion ghetto, because there are other things that people are worried about, and she already has that little small group of voters.
Okay. Mayhill, thank you. Megan, you've said for a long time you wanted it to not be Trump versus Biden. So how do you feel about this?
Look, I think that Kamala, dropped out of the race after totally bombing in a debate before she could even make it to Iowa. I think she's a lot more vulnerable than people realize. I am on TikTok like the rest of my generation, and every other TikTok is a meme of her talking about coconuts. And even like the famous singer Kesha has been doing all these TikTok videos making fun of her. Even like very famous celebrities doing that, like what is unburdened could have been, and did you fall out of a coconut tree? So it's not great that she's already kind of like SNL parodied in social media. I think the Democratic coalition will obviously just circle around her. I'm sure we'll have like Beyonce at the convention coming up, and they'll probably bring out every major celebrity. My curiosity right now is all these rumors about Mark Kelly being her VP. He's the senator from Arizona, who is absolutely beloved. He is married to Gabby Giffords. He's Captain Mark Kelly. He's a former astronaut. His twin is an astronaut as well. He has a very compelling story. He comes from a very modest background, lives in Tucson. I think anyone who is smart on the Democrat side would choose him and stay away from anyone who is sexy to liberals and progressives. And he's like I said, just really beloved figure, at least in the state of Arizona. It would certainly put Arizona back in play. But look, I watched the Trump convention, and it was incredibly well produced. So much enthusiasm. Republicans, other than like the tiny 2% of double hater voters, are all united. There's no chaos, other than I guess Trump as a personality himself. And I think there's actually still a really tough road for Democrats. Even just like the Clintons are saying they support Kamala, but the Obamas are saying that they want to have an open convention. Like they all need to get their messaging together. So I'll be curious to see what happens. But just from like the Arizonan part of me, I'm very curious to see what happens with Mark Kelly, because I mean, he would be a very dangerous pick for Republicans.
Hey,
Yeah,
Mark.
and heard that from some Republicans as well. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I just
Thank you,
wanted to
Megan.
follow up on what Megan said about Mark Kelly. I think Mark Kelly is also the kind of candidate who doesn't just help in Arizona. Mark Kelly would help in the 3 states that really matter the most to Democrats, and that of course is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. They can't win without it. And I think Kelly would be a great pick for those states, especially Wisconsin. That is it's a wonderful combination. So I think, if you talk about Josh Shapiro is great for the state of Pennsylvania. If you talk about Gretchen Whitmer is great for the state of Michigan. You talk about Mark Kelly, I think Megan's right. It expands out pretty dramatically, and it's not just about Arizona with his profile. That's a guy that can help with moderate voters, swing voters, the type of voters that this ticket's going to need.
Yeah, Megan, I have to say I was very bullish on Josh Shapiro, but the minute Kelly got raised, I think, and I've talked to some Trump people about it, they agree. He is formidable in a lot of ways. He adds a ton, and normally VP doesn't matter. I think it would matter a lot in this case because of the way he compliments her. Megan, how well do you know him? Oh wait, you're muted. Sorry, Megan. How well do you know him?
I know him pretty well. He sent my babies books right after they were born, like books about space. He's married to Gabby Giffords, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. He's also served in the military. He's a former Marine. He's really like, even Republicans in Arizona, he had like a sort of tough election, like in his last one, but they are very, very well respected. He raises a lot of money for Democrats. I know he was sent out on the road campaigning for Democrats. I think he raised like $2 million last cycle. Like he's just like Americans need calm and normal and rational, and he is someone who is so normal and so has his brain so well together that he was cleared to go into space. I mean, I really, like I said, I believe I agree with what was just said that he is a very dangerous choice. I think he would get a lot of moderates, a lot of women. I personally know some, never Trump women who would feel a lot better and a lot more comfortable to have someone like Mark Kelly on the ticket. And
How is he on the border, Megan? This is Joe again. How is he on the border?
very moderate. He's look, you can't win in Arizona and be ideologue on either side, especially not as a Democrat. I think it's why you're seeing Ruben Gallego moderating as much as he has done running right now for Senate. He's very normal. I mean, he votes a lot with President Biden, but he's not someone who wouldn't be like bucking the trend. He's not someone any progressive would like. This would be a choice for moderates, never Trump Republicans, independents. And like I said, I just think if you have JD Vance, who's also a veteran and also someone who comes from modest backgrounds and is a great American success story, he and his twin are great American success stories, despite the fact that also his wife was a victim of political violence in a heinous shooting, about 12 years ago. And she's also, I can't express how much they are icons in Arizona. So I hope it's the pick, just because it will make the race a hell of a lot more interesting. And it would calm a lot of nerves about how progressive Kamala is from being from San Francisco.
Megan, just one more on him, because you know him personally. If you take, some politicians are super stuffy and have airs and self-important. He's not like that at all, right?
No, to the point of like, he's very humble and very modest. And, they live, not that these things tend to matter, but they live in like a very modest home in Tucson. He eats at like local Mexican restaurants. Like they're not like showy elites. I don't always love that term, but I would certainly not put them in that category at all.
And did he have a relationship with your dad at all?
Yeah. Like they're like pretty. Gabby, his wife, has been a beloved figure for a long time too, even before he ran for office. And like I said, he's just very normal. I think it's why people like him. He's not a blowhard. He's not.
Yeah.
In fact, I've always been surprised how he even fits in modern Democrat circles, because he is, again, like his lifestyle and his politics are much more moderate than what is in fashion right now.
Yeah. Megan, thank you for all that. Stay with us. Chime in anytime you want. Let's go to question. Ronnie, please unmute.
Thank you, Mark. Love the show and truly enjoyed the honesty of Tom Rogers. I'm a moderate in Pennsylvania. I'm a registered Republican because you can't vote in the primaries of Pennsylvania if you don't pick a party. So I absolutely believe
Ronnie, who'd you vote for in 2016 for president, Clinton or Trump?
I blank on both of them. I did not
Okay.
want.
And what about in 20? What about in 20? Who'd you vote for in 20?
Blank. For the top of the ticket. I really did not want anybody to have a mandate.
Okay.
I'm not against anybody,
Yeah,
but I'm not going to vote.
And when it was Biden, Trump, who were you leaning towards?
Yesterday, this morning, Trump.
Trump. And what about now? What about now?
Kamala would have to convince me that she is capable of governing from the middle. She'll have to run from the middle. She'll have to run as a small government moderate, willing to lead first with that majority that is in the middle. I believe there's a lot more people that identify independent. Some of them might be registered as Republicans, some of them might be registered as Democrat. I believe those that truly identify Democrat is a small slice. And those that are loyal, I'm only going to vote red, Republican, is a small slice, particularly in these swing states that matter. And because she doesn't have to run for the nomination right now, maybe, why not just lead right out of the box? I am a law and order.
What issues besides criminal justice, which I'm sure she'll be tough on, what issues would you like to hear her talk about to win your vote?
Small government, less regulation, get out of the way of business, the lower oil cost, the lower everything else cost. It's an old term, but it's the economy. I don't want to use the word stupid. The stuff that people feel in Pennsylvania and many other states at their house and their table. What Biden used to speak so well to, my kitchen table, Scranton, my daddy, he and the DNC lost their way in that space. And that's the bulk of this country. And that's the ones that are going to decide this election, not these sexy issues that fire some people up on the far right or the many different channels that are on the left.
Ronnie, last question for you, and thank you for participating. two questions for you. Number one, who are you voting for, McCormick versus Casey?
McCormick, but I'm not happy with the candidates. I'm closer to Pennsylvania and Bucks County. McCormick's all the way on the other side of the state. Pittsburgh is a completely different place. And he left here. Yes, he said he came back, but it's unfortunate that we don't have anybody that's been living in both sides of the state and the center of the state for his career.
And how'd you find out about two-way?
It certainly is the internet.
Okay. Thank you for all that, Ryan. Great participation. Thank you. Let's go to Sam. Sam, unmute, please.
Hey, Mark, thanks a bunch for doing this. I've made a couple of notes, been following things closely. I think for this to move forward, that in a great, successful way, that the best thing that she can do is, can she effectively prosecute Trump and Vance? Secondly, will the key indicator of her ability to be successful be an indication of how hard and how fast the money starts coming in? And on another kind of fun side note, I think her theme song, should she choose it, should be Nina Simone's "It's a New Day, I'm Feeling Good." Again, I mentioned Dean Phillips to you in one of our other meetings, and I didn't get much information on that. But since then, I've watched a lot of videos of him versus Mark Kelly, and I'm a big telegenics kind of guy. It's like who presents themselves in a way that appeals to me from a reasoned position and an intellectual position and a knowledge position. And again, I don't know why his name is not coming up more often, but there must be some reason. And I think that if the handlers can play Kamala as a GameStop type of stock situation.
Let me stop you right there. It's
Sure.
pronounced Kamala. Like
Kamala.
Kama. No,
Is it Kamala?
Like Kama. No, like Kama. Like
Oh,
Kama.
like Kamala.
Yeah, Kamala.
Okay.
Okay.
Kamala.
My
So if the
my mission is to get everybody to say correctly, in part because it's disrespectful, in part because some Republicans do it on purpose. So Kamala. Go
Thanks,
ahead.
Teach. Appreciate it. If the
All good.
handlers can play Kamala as a GameStop type stock situation, then she can win. But timing is everything. And so that's all that I've got to offer. And by the way, I found out about the two-way from John Ellis via Peggy Noonan.
All right, that's good. Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate it. All right, let's go to James, please. James, unmute.
Thank you, Mark.
Pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah, Harris winning the nomination would surprise nobody. The Democrat Party is a party of identity politics, so they can't pass over a woman of color, obviously. But even here, you can sense the sense of relief among Democrats. So they're happy to forget about the silly laughing and the Venn diagrams, the word salads, and what can be unburdened by what has been nonsense. That's all going to be forgotten. A lot of excitement, a renewed sense of optimism, no doubt. But there's a reason, as Megan said, that she dropped out of the 2020 Democrat race before Iowa, and even before people like Marianne Williamson. If Tulsi Gabbard can knock her out, you have to wonder even a little bit about what Trump can do to her. So she's going to need a lot of help. Her campaign probably going to be about abortion rights 24/7, and Trump and the GOP are going to paste her on the border, which was assigned to her, among other things. So I don't like her chances a whole lot. But if she should perform poorly and still win, it's going to say a lot about this country. We may have crossed the Rubicon with regard to, the degree of wokeness, even if you want to put it that way, that the country is.
James, what do you like most about Kamala Harris?
Well, look, she's got to be an engaging person. Personally, I think she does seem to radiate, a sense of probably confidence in a one-on-one situation. But when she gets on the stage, it seems that that's where she suffers, and she's going to be on
Okay.
the biggest stage.
And if you could give her some advice, if she said, "I want to win your vote," what would you tell her?
Well, number one, I tell her to get Bluff, Carville, Begala, and everybody else, because she's going to need that help. To get my vote, it would be to display a degree of seriousness that we haven't seen yet, and depth that I don't know that is there, but that's necessary for the President of the United States.
Okay, James, thank you. James, thank you. I want to get Lauren Leader and then Joe back in. Both want to comment. And I'll remind everybody about this platform. This is a platform for civility, communication, learning. People disagree, they do it in an agreeable way. James, thank you. Lauren, go ahead. And then Joe.
Well, I mean, I can't let it go that somehow because it's a woman of color running, that America voting for her means that they've gone all in on identity politics and wokeness. Let's not forget that, you know, as much as we talk about unity at the Republican convention, one of the reasons for unity was because there was a significant, whatever the 20% of folks who voted for Nikki Haley and the folks who identify as never Trumpers have essentially been silenced out of the party. And so the idea that somehow people are going to vote for her, you know, is some sign of, you know, DEI is really insulting to her. And it's the kind of comment that I'd love to see us eliminate from this race. There is no question that there are Americans who would like to see the first woman president. I am among them. I would have been very excited, you know, if it was Nikki Haley, to see her succeed, although she would not have been my candidate of choice. It is time. And we are very far behind the rest of the world on that front. However, that is not the same as saying Americans are going to vote for her just because she's a woman. They will not. Americans are going to vote for two reasons. One, because they're excited about her, or three reasons: because they're excited about her, because they support the Democratic Party and want to see it in the White House, or because they do not want another term of Trump and they are extremely concerned about what that will rot. So I think it's really important that we continue to address, you know, to be clear that it is not wokeism to elect a woman.
Thank you, Lauren. Joe, go ahead. Come on camera if you can, but otherwise go ahead. Joe, I think you're unmuted.
There we go. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
All right, fantastic. I just wanted to comment that as somebody that's been on the ballot 4 times, like, nobody does anybody any favors. Like, when they're voting, they vote for their best interests. They vote in their self-interest. People voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012 because they thought that Barack Obama was, you know, the best candidate. Nobody was doing it for affirmative action reasons. They thought that Obama, they gave, you know, we got the majority of votes in 2008 and 2012. I think he's the first Democrat to do that since FDR. Likewise, if Michelle Obama were running, if you believe all the polls, she would be, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 points ahead of Donald Trump right now. So if Kamala Harris wins, I again, just knowing voters, they're going to be voting for her because they think it's in their best interest, their family's best interest, their country's best interest. I don't think it'll be any particular Rubicon that's being crossed. I would say this, though, to my Republican friends, as a guy that, was fighting for balanced budgets and lower taxes and many things before many people on this call were probably even out of high school. By the way, we did balance the budget 4 years in a row and cut taxes, cut regulations, made the military stronger. I will say, if Kamala Harris wins, then it'll be because she's run a good enough campaign to win, but it will also force Republicans to do something that I wish they would have done a very long time ago. And that is look at where Donald Trump takes the Republican Party. He won in 2016. But as Donald told me, as President Trump told me after he won, he said, you know, Joe, that election could have been held on 10 days. Chances are good I probably would have only won on that one day. Everything broke just right for me. And then Republicans lost in 17. They lost in 18. They lost in 19. They lost in 20. They lost in 21. They lost in 22. They lost in 23. I would say that if Republicans don't win in 24, perhaps they come back across the Rubicon and they start voting for candidates that actually believe in the sort of things that Republicans believed in when I was in Congress and that Ronald Reagan believed in, like balanced budgets, small government, a strong military, a forceful pushback against Russia, calling our enemies, not considering Kim Jong-un to be an ally and somebody that you send love letters to, that we're tough on economic issues, we're strong in the military, and like Reagan, we are moderate temperamentally. That's a winning formula, and I think that's what's been missing from the Republican Party since, well, for about 10 years. If they lose this year, I hope they will look inward and say the reason we lost is because we got away from who we are.
Yep, Joe, thank you. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock Eastern time, the morning meeting, Sean Spicer, Tim Hogan, and I, and a cast of many, another session. We'll talk about what's coming up. Had joined for that. Lauren, now please tell everybody about what you have coming up on two-way. Oh, sorry, unmute, please. Sorry. Lauren, you're still muted. Go ahead. There you go.
Sorry, really important and amazing timing that I have Rev Al Sharpton joining me on Majority Rules Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Again, via two-way platform. Mark's going to share the link. It's also up on my socials. I really encourage you to join, and I think there's a really important conversation about what is happening with Black men. Someone raised it earlier. Rev has spoken a lot on Morning Joe and elsewhere about some of the ways in which Black men have been moving away from the Democratic Party. But Rev and I are going to have a deep and long conversation. I'd love you all to be part of it. There's nobody who knows sort of the ins and outs of American politics as well as him, except for maybe Mark Halperin. So look forward to seeing you all on Tuesday,
thank you, Lauren.
6 p.m. Eastern.
Yep. Thanks to Joe and Megan and Lauren and Hank and Dan and everybody else who participated. Very grateful to you. Lots of hands up. Love to see it. Sorry we didn't get to everybody. Come back tomorrow morning. We'll ask more then, and I'll be back probably tomorrow evening at some point. Thank you for participating in two-way. Tell all your friends. Have a good evening.